Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this video. We made this video to kind of shed light on the California wildfires and their adverse impact on the homeless population that resides in California. And so we're kind of breaking this video into two parts. So the first part is going to look at just how climate change is instigating these rampant wildfires in California. And then the second part of the video is going to look at how these wildfires are impacting the huge homeless population that resides in California. And we're looking at those factors through a social psychological perspective. So thanks for watching. So there are numerous studies that show a direct causation between climate change and the uptick in wildfires. So we know that these fires are becoming increasingly rampant in the West and in California in particular. So how and why is climate change causing these fires? So for starters, California has a climate that is particularly susceptible to these fires. So drier and warmer climates that experience frequent drought are already susceptible to these fires when compared to wetter and more temperate climates. So the dry heat in the western part of the United States is a good facilitator for these types of fires already. And this picture kind of shows this in action. So the snow melts sooner on the caps of the mountains because of the rising in temperature and the CO2 buildup in the atmosphere. And this allows for less runoff of water from the mountaintops, which allows the forests to stay drier for longer periods of time because they are not receiving that water, that runoff. So it is important to distinguish between global warming and climate change. Global warming is the direct result of human interference, such as the burning of fossil fuels, which include the most popular ones are coal, oil, and natural gas. And so when these fossil fuels are burned, it leads to an increase in heat trapping greenhouse gas levels in the Earth's atmosphere, which causes temperatures to steadily rise. Whereas climate change is the result of the whole climate changing over long extended periods of time. And this can be caused by human interactions, but it can also be caused by other measures. So despite these very good conditions for wildfires that California has, 80% of all wildfires are still created by humans. So if a camper is out and he lights a fire and doesn't put it out all the way, and it continues to burn, these conditions of the climate are what really allow these fires to spread and run rampant and burn for longer periods of times over longer distances. So while the climate is very good for these fires to kind of burn for longer periods, it's humans that are responsible for 80% of all fires that get started. So here is Smokey the Bear to remind us of that. So this is an aerial view of just how widespread the smoke and ash is from all of these devastating wildfires in California. And this past year, there have been 8,100 wildfires to date in California, and these have unfortunately killed around 30 people and destroyed upwards of 8,000 buildings. And within the past 2 years, the most destructive and deadliest wildfires that have ever occurred in California have occurred. And in addition to this, the wildfire season is now 75 days longer than it was in the 1970s. So this is just an aerial footage of the smoke that's being put off by these wildfires and how it's moving inwards toward the United States, towards other states and cities, and they are also experiencing these adverse effects of the wildfires. And climate change is also contributing to the warming of the climate, like global warming is. And so in recent years, temperatures have risen roughly 1.3 degrees Celsius. And although that doesn't sound like a lot, if we get to 2 degrees Celsius, some of the long-standing impacts on the environment are likely to be seen as having ice-free summers within the Arctic, having extreme heat waves in other parts of the United States, and severe water scarcity, as well as the mass extinction of up to 18% of insects, 16% of plants, and 8% of vertebrates. And also, coral reefs are dying at alarmingly quick rates. And if we go to 2 degrees Celsius hotter, coral reefs will most likely disappear completely, and the sea levels will continue to rise, which will wipe out people's homes and livelihoods as well. This is a picture of the ash from the fires reflecting against a car. So it really kind of shows just how large these particles are, and how you can imagine how detrimental it is to the population of California, especially the homeless population that reside there. These people may not have access to be able to get into buildings to get out of this kind of ashy air. And this kind of ties back to the AQI, or the Air Quality Index. And basically this measures how much particle matter is in the air, and whether or not it's small enough or large enough for our lungs to be able to filter out. And in 2018, the AQI in California was as high as 238. And just to put that in perspective, anything above 100 is considered unhealthy air quality.
So it is also important to look and understand climate change and its effects through the social and psychology perspective and aspects of things. Social psychology can help us to understand people's attitudes and actions and how we might change these for the better, and by that contribute to solutions to address climate change and the wildfires in California. They also have shown that having personal experience of extreme weather, such as the wildfires in California, so people that are displaced, that have lost their homes in the destruction, could be an important cue. The personal experience of these extreme weather events has shown to lead to greater perceived risk from climate change, and greater knowledge of the causes also of climate change leads to more negative emotions. So in class we did talk about a few theories and effects, and a couple of them could help put things in perspective in relation to climate change. One tendency we talked about was the fundamental attribution error, which is also known as the actor-observer bias. This tendency is when people overemphasize personal characteristics and ignore situational factors in judging others' behavior. So, for example, when something bad happens to someone else, the other subject or person will usually blame that person's behavior or their personality for 65 or more % of the time. So, given the homeless people in California, it's easy for onlookers to perceive the homeless in such negative ways and bring the blame onto them, instead of really understanding the situational factors that could have affected the issue, such as wildfires burning down their homes. This could increase the continuation that homeless people are just lazy and therefore are not anyone's problem. A way we can avoid this bias or this error is to put ourselves in the shoes of the homeless and try to envision the pressures that they might be facing. we picked this. We thought it was important to highlight the fundamental attribution error because this attribution theory can attempt to explain some of the causes of our behaviors in relation to climate change. So another theory that we talked about in class is the social identification theory, or social identity, which is a person's sense of who they are based on their group membership. We thought this was important to include because for homeless people, or homelessness, it literally means a loss of social identity because they've lost their permanent address, their work, school, relationships, and even a place to call their own. People that have suddenly become homeless due to wildfires or disasters, this can take a big toll on not only their loss of social identity, but also their mental health, because they don't know who they are or what group they belong to, or even how to identify themselves anymore. And it goes as far as to say that homelessness can mean an overall sense of oneself. In effect, climate change can damage important social identities as well as personal and collective well-being. Researchers have predicted a range of harmful effects on human societies as well, including an increase in interpersonal violence and intergroup conflict. So I'm going to talk about psychological biases, more specifically implicit biases, because I believe it's important to mention as it relates to homelessness, and hopefully brings awareness to the issues of biases that are actually affecting homeless people right now. So in an ideal world, people would tackle major crisis issues such as global climate change, but unfortunately this isn't the reality because our human brains are far from being accurate or impartial, or in other words, being unbiased. A lot of researchers have actually revealed that we are all subject to systematic biases in judgment and decision making. So these psychological biases can lead to disasters on an unprecedented scale. More specifically, implicit biases or unconscious beliefs refers to the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. So although there has been shown an increase in the support of homeless rights right now, negative stigma targeting homeless individuals and individual interactions still persists. These perceptions of homeless individuals include negative and skewed interpretations of their honesty, responsibility, and intelligence. So if you don't know, implicit biases are pervasive, so everyone possesses them. Doesn't matter who you are or what you believe in, we all have these biases in us. But these implicit associations that we do hold do not necessarily align with our declared beliefs or even reflect our views that we would explicitly endorse. Research suggests that public displays of panhandling, sleeping on the street, and other survival behaviors that are reflected through homeless people are intensifying the negative stigmas and triggering emotional reactions of guilt, shame, and disgust on part of the observer. So this is an attempt to avoid these. So in an attempt to avoid these emotions, the general public often increases their social distance from their homeless individuals instead of truly understanding the effects and where this is coming from. So implicit biases are malleable. There have been many types of training and tests that individuals have gone through. I'm sure you've heard of the ones for racial biases that we've read about in class or seen videos of, such as the picture tests or the gun tests. These are all helpful techniques that help de-bias ourselves because our brains are incredibly complex, and the implicit associations that we have formed can be gradually unlearned through a variety of these techniques. And hopefully, in relation to homelessness, bringing awareness to this type of belief and bias can help overall the homeless people that are being affected by these bias. So the previous theories and attributions we talked about are just some ways that people view the effects of climate change. There are also other ways. So the impacts of climate change can also include specific individual and social perceptions of the risks. So individuals and communities vary in their vulnerability to climate change. So maybe due to their social status and their capacity to adapt, their perceptions of climate change. If we change these, it can help raise ethical issues. The efforts to mitigate or reduce climate change can both decrease the human contributions to climate change, such as the wildfires in California, and improve individual psychological well-being. So in other words, these different ways can help bring awareness to the issues and help reduce the severity of their effects, especially to the individuals that are being affected.